You see these headlines pop up. One about Time Magazine's Person of the Year, another about a lost spacecraft at Mars, and then something about a new electric tugboat in India. On their own, they seem totally unrelated, right? But what if I told you that when you look at them together, from just a single week in December 2025, they actually paint a really clear picture of where our world is headed?
And that's really the core question we're digging into here. How do all these separate moments, these little bits of progress, partnership, and even remembrance, actually add up to the future that we're all building right now? So let's dive in with a theme that, honestly, is impossible to ignore these days.
Okay, first up, AI, the explosion of artificial intelligence. You just can't escape it. And this week was a perfect example of that story. A story of just incredible world-changing achievement, but also a pretty stark reminder of our own limits.
And wow, what a place to start. On December 11th, Time Magazine made this huge statement. They named the architects of AI as their Person of the Year. And their reasoning was crystal clear. 2025, they said, was the moment AI's influence became totally irreversible. Thinking machines were officially reshaping pretty much every part of our lives. So you have this massive global recognition, right? But at the very same time, AI was becoming this powerful new tool for day-to-day governance, like right down on the ground. In Maharashtra, the government teamed up with Microsoft to launch something called Mahacrime OS AI. It's this super advanced platform for digital police investigations. So that abstract promise of AI, suddenly it's very, very real. And of course, that brings up all sorts of new questions about things like power and surveillance.
Okay, so on one hand, we're celebrating this incredible new intelligence we've built from scratch. We're putting it to work right here on Earth. But then, in the very same week, we got this humbling reminder from the final frontier about just how fragile our technology can be.
And this challenge is just perfectly captured by what happened over at Mars. NASA had to confirm they lost contact with their Maven spacecraft. This thing was performing flawlessly. It just ducked behind the planet for a routine pass like it always does, and then nothing. It just went silent. What a powerful counterpoint, right? In the same week we're patting ourselves on the back for creating artificial intelligence, we get reminded that even our most sophisticated tech is incredibly fragile and can just disappear into the void. This tension, this push and pull between our high-tech ambitions and our real-world limits, that leads us perfectly into our next theme. Because while we're reaching for the stars, a lot of nations are also getting really focused on building a more sustainable, more collaborative future right here at home.
Just take a look at this project, for instance. It was kicked off by Union Minister Sarbananda Sonowal. What is it? It's India's very first zero-emission, all-electric tugboat. Now that might sound like a small thing, a tugboat, but it's actually a massive statement of intent. It's about modernizing the country's ports and seriously cutting emissions in the whole maritime sector.
And that intent, it's not just talk. It has a very specific number attached to it. 50. That's the goal. 50 of these green tugs in service by 2030, all part of the Green Tug Transition Program. That is a really clear, really ambitious target.
And listen, this isn't just some plan for the distant future. The work is already underway. It started at the Deen Dayal port in Kandla. So this is a real, practical first step towards building cleaner, more efficient ports for tomorrow. So, at the exact same time India is building this greener infrastructure at home, it's also busy building stronger bridges abroad. And one of the most important areas for this is in the critical field of global health.
This new partnership between India and Liberia is a perfect example of this in action. So, they signed a major health agreement, which is great, but the real story is in the details. Liberia officially adopted the Indian Pharmacopoeia. Now, what's that? It's basically the official national rule book for drug standards. Think about what that means. It's a profound gesture of trust. Liberia is essentially saying, we trust Indian standards to ensure the quality and safety of medicines for our citizens. It's an incredibly powerful symbol of cooperation.
All right, for our final section, let's talk about legacies. We're going to look at how a society juggles these two things at once, reflecting on its past while at the same time building for its future. It's all about honoring heroes and making commitments to the generations that aren't even here yet.
And sometimes, a legacy is literally cemented in steel and concrete. Over at the new International Cricket Stadium in New Chandigarh, that's exactly what happened. Two of the stands were officially named after absolute cricketing legends, Yuvraj Singh and Harmanpreet Kaur. And they did this right before a huge international match, making their contributions a permanent physical part of the landscape of Indian sport. Pretty cool.
So, from that moment of celebration, we turn to a much more solemn moment of reflection, because that very same week also marks the end of a really long and significant chapter in India's political history.
Former Union Home Minister Shivraj Patil passed away at the age of 90, and with him, a remarkable career in public service came to a close. His journey was incredible. It started at the local level, in Latur, and eventually took him to some of the highest offices in the land. Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Home Minister. His career spanned decades of just profound change in India, and his passing was truly mourned as the end of an era often defined by his calm decorum and his balanced leadership.
And see, this is that essential balance we were talking about. Even as we take a moment to pause, to remember and honor those who came before us, the work of laying the groundwork for a better future, that continues.
And that commitment to the future gets a formal spotlight every single year on December 14th. It's National Energy Conservation Day. Now, this is more than just a date on the calendar, It's really an annual national recommitment. It's driven by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and the whole point is to weave the idea of energy conservation right into the public consciousness. It's literally about building a legacy of responsibility for the future.
So, let's step back for a second. We've got AI breakthroughs and failures. We've got green tugboats and global health pacts. We've got sporting tributes and political legacies. On the surface, it all seems like a bunch of random events, right? But when you start to pull on those threads, you realize they're connected, and a much clearer picture starts to emerge.
What this 1 week really shows us is a world that's kind of defined by 3 big ideas, or maybe 3 tensions. First, there's the struggle with incredible technological speed. We're celebrating AI, but getting humbled by silence from Mars. Second, you see this proactive nation building happening, driving green innovation at home while forging new partnerships abroad. And finally, there's this constant and I think really healthy reflection, where honoring heroes and mourning leaders is seen as part of the exact same work as planning for a sustainable future.
Look, none of these events were connected by some grand plan, but together they tell a single, coherent story about our priorities, our ambitions, and our challenges right now. And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. If this is the story of just 1 week, what kind of story is being written by the headlines that you see every single day?